Welcome to the Right Time Podcast. The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Right Time. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. You can send us a tweet at the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. That is at Bomani_Jones. Ladies and gentlemen, we have officially reached the point in the sports calendar where we are leading off this show by talking about something that came on TV last night. Now, something that came on TV on this network, so they appreciate it when I do that sort of thing. Company man. But something that came on TV nonetheless, which is the 30 for 30 last night on the Celtics and the Lakers. I was watching it on the Twitter. You guys seem to really be enjoying it. And I guess it's wild because, like, I'm 36 years old. I'll be 37 in a couple of months. So for me, the first NBA Finals series that I remember happening, right, that I could be like, okay, I remember that, Celtics-Rockets, 1986. Like, I remember when Celtics-Lakers came around in 87, and it was such a big thing, and we had a basement at the house. We go down in the basement and turn it on. Like, people I hadn't seen in forever were down there, and this is going to shock you guys, but everybody at the Jones house was rooting for the Lakers. I wonder what that's all about, right? Anyway, like, that is the one. And I had no context or understanding at the time of, like, historically what the rivalry was, which is not to say that I didn't understand that the rivalry had history. I just didn't understand that the rivalry had been so lopsided for so long, right? Like, I had no idea that the 1960s were basically, hey, Jerry West, how'd you like to get your head bashed in year after year after year by the same dudes? The dude that hates losing more than anybody on planet Earth, Michael Jordan included, just kept catching L after L after L at the hands of the Celtics, right? Like, it was like, at that point in my life, there was no way for me to conceive of this idea that somehow the Lakers were continuous also-rans. Like, what? You talking about they're the Lakers, man? They got Magic Johnson. Of course, at that time, too, you could have told me Magic Johnson had played for 30 years, and I would have believed it also. But it's fun for me watching these things as they happen because, one, I'd love to play the old man thing and be like, yeah, you young boys, get a chance to go back and watch what basketball was, what it was like back in the day. But then the other level is I get into something like that and I realize, wait a minute, I didn't, like, actually know these things either, right? Like, I didn't have any real appreciation for the time and place on any of those things with the Lakers and Celtics. So I like that. This is the thing with the 30 for 30s, like, especially from the beginning and coming into now. Like, these are bigger names, like more marquee value on this. But I love when we're able to do these and get to, like, to subtle elements of stories that people forget. Like, I worked as an executive producer on the 30 for 30 called Rand University. That was about Randy Moss. And what made that cool as something to do was that we were not doing just Randy Moss NFL highlights. You wound up getting to a level of the Randy Moss story that had kind of been forgotten in time, like what it was for it to be Randy Moss in high school, the college Randy Moss stuff and everything else, right? Like, you know, you got to get, I want to say beneath the surface necessarily, but there are things that happen with stories now. We get to that second level and you remember it, but when we tell the story down the line, it's not necessarily going to come up. Like, this is your chance to revisit those sorts of things. And even with something like Celtics and Lakers, as big as that was, there's still those levels underneath that you get to talk about and that you get to discuss. And so they do 5 hours on this, and this is legit probably worth like 7 hours. Like, I don't know how much more time they could possibly give this. Like, I mean, this was that, right? So the first 2 episodes were on last night. They ended at the 1984 NBA Finals when Magic Johnson just came apart. What they call it, Shannon?
Tragic Johnson.
Tragic Johnson. Keep in mind, by the way, Magic already had 2 rings. 2 rings and 2 Finals MVPs, right? And we still threw him out. And that's Magic, who people like.
I was trying to imagine, think about if you would have had that situation with Magic. 2 MVPs, 2 final MVPs, but choked in that situation. Imagine if that was today and the amount of ridicule. The only comparison I have is really LeBron.
Well, I think that's the parallel, right? Would be like LeBron 2011, except LeBron didn't have the stripes yet. Like, it was a matter of, are you going to be able to do it? What's wild about that thing with Magic is people just went retroactive and, like, wiped everything off that Magic had done previously. We've seen Magic win in college. You've seen Magic win in the pros. You've seen Magic win at 20 years old. Magic had 1 bad series, and they're like, you know what? Maybe this guy isn't anything. Of course, Shannon, for Magic, it was the worst timing, as the guy on the other side of that was, you know, Larry Bird. There's that. There's that in every dynamic associated with Bird Magic, right? Like, you don't think about it now, because Magic old, right? A, Magic's old, and B, can I be honest? Can we be real about this? We also glad we got Magic, right? That we like, he is a universally beloved figure. Like, that's the way that you think about Magic. At that time, Magic was the counterpoint to Bird. Bird was the counterpoint to Magic. Like, there are so many people who had one guy on either side of that rivalry who took literally decades before they could go back and realize how good the other dude was. Like, it's wild when I go talk to my father about Larry Bird. Like, I remember the way he talked about Larry Bird when Larry Bird was playing. Wasn't here for it at all. Never mind the numbers and everything else. Wasn't here for it with Larry Bird. Yet about 15 years later, and suddenly he could go back and appreciate how good Larry Bird was. I think a lot of that was the same for people with Magic Johnson. Like, this rivalry, I feel like Celtics-Lakers was less about which team you liked and probably spoke a lot more to what your lifestyle was, like what your social interaction was. It got to spoke to what you thought basketball was, what you thought basketball should be, what you thought made somebody a better basketball player. Like, all those things were thrown in there together, and you had them as big markets. Because you could talk about, like, you know, and that's the 80s part. Because you could talk about the 60s, the 70s, I mean, wasn't really much of a discussion because it didn't seem like either of them were good at the same time. They didn't play in the finals at all in the 1970s, I don't believe. But in the 60s is one thing because the Celtics had all the players and, there's no free agency, all that stuff. You run through it. In the 80s, I really do think it then became a matter of, like, so what's that you playing, fool?
You definitely had to pick a side. Like, it couldn't be, oh, no, I like Magic and I like Larry. Oh, no, pick a side.
Right. And don't be – here's the thing about it, though. You could be a white dude and root for the Lakers. It could be done, right? Like, you be the white dude, you could be rooting for the Lakers, and people would be like, okay, cool, I can see it. But, man, if you was the black dude rooting for the Celtics back in those days, Shannon, all I got is Howard Bryant and Mike Hitman. That's it. That's all I got.
Members of New Edition.
Oh, that's right. Lavelle, our man Lavelle, he even rooted for the Celtics because our cards were getting pulled on that one. That scene in Do the Right Thing where the white dudes walk around with the Larry Bird jersey, it wasn't just a wardrobe choice, baby. That was a symbol. Like, that's what that spoke to. Walk up in the spot with a Larry, you black, walk up in the spot with a Larry Bird jersey. The needle come off that record so fast.
It's another element of it because Larry Bird wanted no parts of that. Like, I'm just a basketball player. I didn't want to be the great, quote unquote, the great white hope. Mm-hmm. But so many people built him up to be that, and he was uncomfortable with that.
Did they mention that in the 30 for 30? I didn't actually watch it.
Yep.
Oh, he did bring that up.
Mm-hmm. Well, in the term, him being asked back then in an interview and using the term great white hope.
Did I ever tell you, by the way, about the time we had Wes Welker on Dad's radio show, and I figured that he would not, like, Wes Welker, the white receiver, right? Every receiver is Wes Welker. And so I asked him, I was like, yo, so how tired do you get of every white wide receiver being called the next Wes Welker? And I expect him to be like, yo, it's so frustrating. Incorrect, guys. Wes Welker was like, I love it. That's dope. I'm that. Larry Bird, like, nah. But also keeping in mind, Larry Bird and his hostility toward white basketball players. Larry Bird believed it was an insult to have a white dude guarding him. And he said this in, like, the 21st century. Like, I don't know what he was saying back then. That's what he said with perspective and everything else. He's like, nah. You need to, hey, could y'all please have somebody else guard me, please? I'm about to light Tom Chambers up. Tom Chambers had hops. In case you ain't know. You going to say something about Mark Jackson, aren't you?
Yeah, I was going to reference it. Absolutely.
I mean, look, man, Mark Jackson got to live with that. He caught that tiger knee to his chest, and Tom Chambers just kept going up. Like, I feel like Mark Jackson looked up and saw who was coming. I was like, I'll be good. I'll just take a charge. Then it was like, oh, wait a minute, that's Tom Chambers. Rut-row. Then next thing you know, Tom Chambers was bouncing off him, going to the rim. Tom Chambers did not play for the Celtics, but I got cash money that says Red Auerbach at one point made a call and was like, so what do you think? You think we can get Tom Chambers? Like, after McHale's foot went bad, you telling me Red Auerbach wasn't like, all right, let me get a list of guys that's out there. What about Tom Chambers? What about that? Because I'm glad they mentioned in the 30 for 30, like, racist subtext, because it's kind of unavoidable in this. And the part that's wild about it, though, is it's not just that the Celtics tended to have more white dudes than most basketball teams had. It's that Red Auerbach apparently had a Google alert, even in the 1970s, for whoever the coldest white dude was on the planet at that time, he's going to wind up playing here. I don't know how he didn't get Rick Barry. Or is that how much of a jerk Rick Barry was? That even Red Auerbach was like, nah, we don't need no white dude that bad. They had Kevin McHale, Larry Bird, and Danny Ainge on the team at the same time, with Bill Walton off the bench. Now, we ain't talking about like Greg Kite and Jerry Sichting and all them other cats that were just there, to fill it out. But no, the Celtics were like, it wasn't like they were just getting any white dude. They were getting the best white dudes on earth. And then they go play the Lakers, who had Kurt Rambis. 888-729-3776. That is our telephone number. Give us a call. Coming up next, we're going to talk about another thing that we learned from that 30 for 30. That your myth of parity in basketball, it destroyed it in that movie. You're listening to ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, Sirius XM Channel 80.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Right Time. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. Jackie MacMullen of ESPN will join us next segment. Jackie MacMullen will join us to talk about what it's like covering the Celtics-Lakers rivalry. 888-729-3776. That's our telephone number. And hey, time for Straight Talk. Brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. So we were just talking about the Lakers-Celtics 30 for 30 last segment. What my man here, my bitches say, because I talked about how, look, maybe there was white folks rooting for the Lakers, but the black people rooting for the Celtics were few and far between. My man said it was so hard to cheer for the Celtics after the Sixers would lose in the 80s, but it was East versus West. Your house was about East versus West, huh? I didn't know that. I didn't know how many people were like really drawing the line there. Also, my man Scott said he loved that Ice-T is narrating the 30 for 30 and close but no cigar. Close. Almost. I can see how you can make that mistake. Almost. But me and Shannon were talking about this before the show, and Shannon made a very good point about that documentary that I think it should help people with is everybody out here talking about how the NBA needs some parity. When have we had the parity? And what is the parity going to make better? Because was anything better than getting, I guess this is in episode 3 that you're going to get, but anything better than getting the Celtics and the Lakers for 3 out of 4 years in the NBA Finals? Is there anything better than that? You go back and look at the 1980s. 5 teams in the whole league made the NBA Finals in the 1980s. 5 teams. The Rockets, the Lakers, the Celtics, the Sixers, and the Pistons. That's it. That's all. Those the only teams who wound up making it, right? And remember, the Celtics went 4 years in a row. The Lakers went 8 times out of 10. 8 out of 10. Ain't nobody ever had no parity in the NBA. How many championships the Celtics win in the 1960s? You know when you had parity in the NBA? I tell you when you had parity in the NBA. You had parity in the NBA in the 1970s. Please let me know the last time you heard somebody reminiscing on the good old days of the 1970s. Because I got nothing on that, right? So let me think about the 70s. Well, we got the Bucks won one. Well, the Celtics won one. The Bucks won one. The Celtics won more than one. But the Bucks, the Celtics, the Lakers, the Bullets, the Sonics, the Blazers. Y'all don't long for that. Nobody's like, tell me how much you remember about the 78 or 79 Sonics, whichever one it was that won the championship. You don't know who's on that team. Now, granted, the NBA was barely on television at that time, but man, it's all notion. Basketball is not a game where you intend to have parity. Like the parity thing works in the NFL in large part because it's a single elimination like all the time, basically. Even the regular season feels like a single elimination tournament. So you can have that because there's always going to be that luck factor that's thrown in there by the fact that all it takes is you lose one game for you to get out of there. You can't have parity in the NBA, man, because the best basketball team is going to win. And somehow we act like the best team winning is bad. Like, there's a problem, and we knew who was going to win it. Okay, so you don't want the best team to win. I don't really understand why you. That's strange.
Thought it made it better to have that one singular team that everyone's trying to achieve and try to beat, rather than it being a different team year in and year out. You have that one singular team. What can the Cavs do now in this offseason to beat the Warriors? Like, everything now is, how do we beat the Warriors?
And, by the way, the Warriors have run through the league for 3 years, and this year, go look at the Warriors' television ratings. The Warriors' television ratings are great. Like, for the NBA, I feel like a lot of what it is for people deciding what they're going to watch is just basically entertainment. Like, go look at the Thunder's ratings. People love watching Russell Westbrook, right? Like, it doesn't matter if they're, quote-unquote, competitive for a championship or not. They love to watch Russell Westbrook play basketball, and that's basically good enough. But, no, I don't think that you need parity at all to make the NBA entertaining. That's just not how this works. Basketball, really unlike these other sports, you watch it because you love it. Like, football is a social activity as much as anything else. And not to say that people don't love football, but, like, you watch the Super Bowl. Why? Because, it's what we do. We watch the Super Bowl. I'm not interested all the time in who's in the Super Bowl, but we watch the Super Bowl because it's just kind of a thing that you do. And the way that people get into football has a lot to do with social relationships, a lot to do with identity politics, all that stuff. Basketball got a whole lot more to do with just, man, I really enjoy watching these guys play basketball. And if you get parity, you know what you're going to have? A bunch of teams that aren't worth watching. Because the only way that you got parity is if nobody is really good. And basketball is very similar to another activity that people videotape very often. It's only worth watching when it's the best. 888-729-3776. Let's hit the phones and talk to Coach from Michigan. Coach, thanks for calling the right time.
Bomani.
How you doing, man?
You the best, man. I mean, I really, after listening to you when you first got going on, I really think that you keep everything real. I got a lot of respect for you.
Thank you, man.
You haven't had any bloopers. You ain't made no mistakes. and a lot of kudos from me to you, brother. And just keep it going.
Thank you, man.
And what I want to comment on is that there is no way, after watching 30 for 30, there is no way any of these guys could even could be on the same court with these guys, man. And I wish people would stop trying to compare them with these guys and those guys with these guys. There's no way the fouls that they gave back in the day, there's no way these guys would even last.
Yeah,
they should please stop trying to compare these guys.
Well, I think there's something to that. And, Coach, I appreciate the call. But on the other side of it, Klay Thompson has got the clamps on just about anybody that you're throwing out from back in the day. The way I think that you have to do it with those sorts of things is you got to imagine. So if I dropped Magic Johnson off in 2017 and gave him all the advantages that you have, then what would he turn into? Like, that's the only way I think that you can do it. Because, I mean, look, players physically evolve, right? It's all like, players now are certainly more talented than ever. But you're not going to tell me that if I take Elgin Baylor from back in the day and put him here, that he ain't going to get it right. 888-729-3776. Let's talk to Dave. Dave, thanks for calling the right time.
Bomani, you're talking about all the white dudes on the Celtics, and you're right, but you're leaving out Dennis Johnson, who is as white as any black dude could be.
What? He was what?
He was as white as any black dude could be as far as a great basketball player. He was a defense-first guy, and by the way, he was on that Celtics or Sonics team that you just mentioned. You said, can we remember any of the Sonics from the 79 championship team? DJ was part of that team, too.
So, like, do you think he was whiter than Lenny Wilkins or something? Because he was on that team, too. Like, how did you come
Lenny
to this?
Lenny Wilkins was a coach, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think he played on it also. But how did you come to this, like, relative scale of whiteness that made Dennis Johnson white? Because he played defense?
Oh, well, he wasn't exactly
I mean, was Michael Cooper white?
Not at all.
Okay, he was pretty defense first, too. Thanks for nothing, Dave. Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. Coming up next, we'll talk to Jackie MacMullen about what it was like to cover the Celtics-Lakers rivalry. You're listening to ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, Sirius XM Channel 80.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Right Time. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. All guests join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Just like our next guest, if you watch Around the Horn, you might see her beating me from time to time. She also wrote a book on Magic Johnson and Larry Bird called When the Game Was Ours. Her name is Jackie MacMullen. Now, Jackie, you are a native New Englander. So for you growing up, how big was this Celtics-Lakers rivalry?
Oh, it was huge. And, as a young writer, Bomani, I was lucky enough to go to the Globe right out of college. And I just kept thinking, when do I get to be in? When do I get to be part of this, right? So I graduated from college in 1982. So I missed the 81 championship that the Celtics won. But then it got to the mid-'80s, and I'm like, how do I get in on this? Because it was the biggest thing in town. And of course, today's world, everybody thinks as New England as the New England Patriots. Well, they were just horrid. They were horrible. Nobody cared about the Patriots back then. It was all about the Celtics, and specifically all about the Celtics and the Lakers. There was a genuine hatred between the two teams, the players, and especially the fans.
So you're telling me Bob Ryan wouldn't give up his seat and it made it harder for you to get in there? Is that the thing?
Bob was pretty nice to me, but I was just so young and so green. I had to wait my turn like everybody else,
We are talking to Jackie MacMullen on the right time. So for you, because I think there's like basically two phases of this that are really big, right? The 1960s, which is the Lakers never winning and the Celtics walking over them every year. And then the 1980s where the Lakers finally got over the hump and we saw the fall of the Celtics dynasty really kind of starting when Len Bias died. So for you, what do you think is the most interesting period of this?
Well, I think for me, again, because I lived it, because I started covering it, was the late 80s. I mean, people the other day were asking me, well, so what's the most memorable Celtics-Lakers championship series? And everybody expects you to say 84, right? Because that's the one that the Celtics really steal from the Lakers, and that's where tragic magic comes and all that. But for me, Bomani, it was really 1987, and the reason for that is because up until then, in 86, the Celtics were unstoppable. I still think that's one of the greatest teams of all time. Bill Walton jumped into the Wayback Machine, had a great year with the sixth man. They drafted Len Bias, as you said, and they had this young player named Reggie Lewis who was coming along, and you thought, my God, this is never going to end, because not only do you have these great players in their prime, but now you have the two bridge players in place in Len Bias and Reggie Lewis. Now, just think about that for a minute. This could go on for a whole other decade. Instead, Walton gets hurt, never plays in 87. Kevin McHale plays the 1987 finals with a broken foot all the way through, even though doctors told him, if you keep playing on this, it's going to hurt you down the line. He played all through that series with a broken foot. Then, of course, Magic just slays them with that junior hook against all three of the best guys in the front line in basketball at that time. And then after that, it all falls apart for Bird. He has double heel surgery. He has back problems. The Celtics are never the same, and they never get back to the finals. Now, if you had told me in 1987, I covered that entire series, that we would never see Magic's Lakers and Bird's Celtics play each other again for a championship, I would have told you were nuts. But that's exactly what happened.
Well, would you like to join me in the Kevin McHale Appreciation Society? Because I feel like Celtics have two players I feel this way about. One of them's Havlicek. The other one is Kevin McHale, where I don't even know that much about Havlicek, but I can read the numbers and tell how good he was. And McHale, I try to explain to younger people, like, no, really, like that guy might have been the best power forward ever up until the time that he played.
Right, and I'm the president of that fan club, and again, the other thing that people talked about, we always heard about Bird showing up early, and there was great footage of Bird, shooting alone in that gym for hours upon end, putting in the time. But I'm telling you, I was there. Kevin McHale did the same damn thing. He just did it at different times of day when nobody saw him do it. He was one of the greatest athletes I've ever seen. He was so disinterested in being a superstar. He just didn't care. And, of course, there's the famous story when he scored the 50-plus points, and Bird said, you should have scored more, and went out and beat him, a few nights later, because that was Bird's mentality. It was never McHale's mentality. And I would say that that's true Bomani now in retirement. They've been trying to honor McHale here in Boston for over a decade for some of the stuff he's done. And he just says, hey, thanks, I love my time in Boston. He's just not interested. From beginning to end, he was a boy from Hibbing, Minnesota, who remembered where he came from, who cared the most about his family. He just doesn't care about all the other stuff around it. And I think sometimes that hurts you when it comes time for history to remember you.
All right, we are talking to Jackie MacMullen on the right time. Now, thinking about those 80s teams, how much did Magic Johnson, just he himself, change what this rivalry was?
Well, he did. And, how about just the growth of Magic Johnson to begin with? In 1980 championship, plays every position, jump center. We all know about all that. And we think, well, this kid's just the greatest thing we've ever seen. And then in 84, they play the Lakers come in, they play the Celtics, and he chokes. He'll be the first to tell you that. He dribbles out the clock. He misses some big free throws, and everybody's like, whoa, did we prop this guy up too high? Is he not really what we thought he was? And the night they lost in Boston, he sat in his hotel room with his two close friends, Mark Aguirre and Isaiah Thomas, who are two of his closest friends, and they ordered some food, and they sat up there in I think it was the Four Seasons Hotel, and looked out at this huge crowd celebrating this wonderful championship. And, in talking to both Aguirre and Isaiah Thomas about that night, they said, we would have bet the house that Magic Johnson was going to win one for the Lakers the next year. And, of course, that's exactly what happened. And I think, again, one of the significant things about 87 was after that series was over and Magic made that, among other shots, the junior hook and many other things, what Larry Bird said after that series. Now, Larry Bird had a genuine dislike for the Lakers. I don't know that he disliked Magic personally, but he was his foil. He'd check the box scores every morning. He wanted to beat him. He wanted to be better than him. But then in 1987, when that series is over, he said, you just watched the best player in basketball. It's almost like he conceded, And I think Irvin, Pat Riley, I thought it was interesting, said the other day he thinks he's the greatest player of all time, and I can understand why someone who was around him would think that, because as good as he was on the court, he was every bit as good as that off the court. He was just an infectious personality that kept people upbeat, that kept them positive, and that made everyone feel included. And those are special qualities in a player.
Well, I think you just kind of touched inadvertently on an interesting dynamic in that Magic Bird rivalry that we forget, is that they hit the league in the same year, but Larry Bird was 3 years older than him. Like, he was much more a grown man when he got into the league, because the way you say Larry Bird saying that, it almost sounds like he recognized at that point that, yeah, this guy has reached that point, and I'm probably as good as I'm going to be.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. And I think also, too, Bird knew his own body was starting to break down. But he saw a growth and a maturity in Irvin that, well, I guess the rest of the world saw, but I think Larry understood it a little more implicitly. Remember now, they were teammates on this kind of made-up college all-star international team. It was a made-for-TV event, and they played on that together. And, Magic was on the bus playing his boombox, he's got his arm around everybody, and Larry sitting in the corner, won't talk to anybody. And yet during that time, they were both on the second team because Joby Hall refused to play them. They were better than some of the starters. He was too busy playing his own Kentucky guys. and they developed this friendship and this bond. And Magic thought, well, this will last forever. So when they play each other in the national championship the very next year, the college national championship, he goes up ready to give Bird, a big hug and a big hello. And Bird walks right past him because his mentality always was, if you're not with me, you're against me. And believe me when I tell you, he held firm to that from start to finish of his career. And Irvin, I think, probably enjoyed it a little more than Larry did because he liked everybody around him. Aguirre and Isaiah Thomas, they were threats to him, but he never let it stop him from being friends with them and opening up his world to them.
We were talking to Jackie MacMullen on the right time. And I guess for Bird and Magic, could it have been possible that there were ever two guys who were better for time and place in the teams that they wound up on? The Celtics were down. Larry Bird comes in. I think they improved by like 25 games or something like that. And Magic just seemed made for L.A.
Right. And they really, because Bird was lunch bucket, dive for loose balls, physical player, and fit the city, the grind and the grit of Boston. And Magic was Showtime, the glitz and the glamour of L.A. And, of course, the two of them together, because David Stern was no dummy, he saw what he saw, and he said, yes, rivalries are nice, but our league's about people, our league's about stars. And that's when they promoted the two of them. And then, of course, the famous Converse basketball shoe commercial, all those stars were aligned to make the two of them the epicenter of really, I don't think it's hyperbole to say they really saved the league, because in earlier years, as you remember, Bomani, that the NBA, everyone's like, well, they're all on drugs and all they do is shoot. And then Larry and Magic came in, and they wanted to pass first. So they not only changed the image of the game, they also changed the way the game was played.
All right, Jackie MacMullen. She is the author, by the way, of When the Game Was Ours, a book on Magic Johnson and Larry Bird that you should check out. We also have a 30 for 30 that we're showing on this network that you should check out also. Jackie, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
All right, Bomani.
All right, you have a good one. There are rivalries, and then there is Celtics versus the Lakers. Celtics-Lakers Best of Enemies, a 5-hour 30 for 30 film event, chronicles the storied franchise's epic clashes and relives the Boston-LA battle from both sides with sensational footage and fresh, insightful interviews. Part 3 of the 3-part documentary airs tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. Again, Celtics-Lakers Best of Enemies, a new 30 for 30 film, continues tonight.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Right Time. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. All guests join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Thanks to Jackie MacMullen of ESPN for joining us last segment. David West of the world champion Golden State Warriors joins us at 5 o'clock Eastern. David West will join us next segment. 888-729-3776. That is our telephone number. We were just talking about the Celtics-Lakers rivalry. We've been talking about this most of the hour. Let's hit the phones and talk to Jeff from Georgia. Jeff, thanks for calling The Right Time.
Hey, Bomani, thanks for taking my call. I sure appreciate your point of view and opinions, and I'm glad I get to listen to them. Hey, so I'm calling in regards to that caller right before Jackie Mack that had that insensitive comment about Dennis Johnson. I think you missed an opportunity to bypass that comment, but look a little bit deeper into what he was saying. At the lowest level, it really was, the emergence of urban basketball. That street ball style with the Lakers.
You think that was street ball?
No, well, for the '80s, was high flying Showtime. That's where it was coming from, and that's how folks looked at it. And then, Celtics fans, that was really the last threshold of non-athletic Hoosier style basketball. So
you don't think you don't think Larry Bird was athletic? You don't think Danny Ainge is a professional baseball player? Like, you don't think that he was athletic? You don't think Kevin McHale was athletic?
Athletic, yes, but in a different sense. If you look at Robert Parrish, Kevin McHale, the two of them probably combined for a 15-inch vertical. They were a different kind of athlete, and I think the fans saw it as such. And like you discussed, there was racial undertones for that, but there was also a stylistic point of view for the fans.
But let me help you here with this. One, I cut him off, A, because we needed to get to a commercial break, but B, he was in the process of making a fool of himself. Now, let me ask you this. When you start talking about the vertical and stuff, what kind of vertical do you think Magic Johnson had, right? Like, I'm looking at, like, when I watch those Lakers clips, it's up and down, but it's not high flying, right? They don't look like Danny Ainge always talks about how people sell him short on the fact that he could touch the top of the square in his prime at his height. The Lakers were up and down, but I mean, Dominique Wilkins didn't play for them. You know what I mean?
No, you're right. And Neek would be the exception in the 80s with athleticism, but it was a stylistic difference between the teams that I don't think we need to ignore.
Here's what I think. Here's what I think about that, and I appreciate the call. If Larry Bird were black, no one would talk about how unathletic he is. No one would, right? So let's go to, like, today's NBA, for example. James Harden, all right? James Harden is not playing anybody's above the rim sort of game, right? If James Harden was white, all you'd hear about is how James Harden does all the little things to get it done or whatever it is. Now, James Harden does have a piece of athleticism that is crucial, which is his acceleration game is mean, right? I always talk about the fact that he can do all that dribbling through his legs and everything else, and the next thing you know, he's gone by you, even though it doesn't seem like he moved that fast. But I don't think there was nearly as much a stylistic difference between the Celtics and the Lakers as people make it out to be. Larry Bird out here throwing passes, like behind the back stuff, no-look stuff, everything else, right? What happens is, once you view it through the lens of race, confirmation bias kicks in. And then from there, we start talking about all these things, like how high-flying could the Lakers be with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar? Old Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, it should be noted.
That was part of the contention with the Lakers in the early 80s as well. After they won that championship in Magic's rookie season, they wanted to actually slow it down, slow the pace down, because Kareem was the focal point of their offense. And it wasn't until they fired, Westhead?
Right. Before
they decided, okay, we're going to crank it back up again.
Right.
But they wanted to slow it down, more of the half-court, let's play to Kareem's strengths.
Right. I mean, it's so interesting that you can't ignore race in this Lakers-Celtics thing. It's absolutely impossible for you to ignore race. But damn, y'all can do better with it than this.
In regards to the high-flying or, quote, urban style that he referenced, that was more in the 70s when you had the merger of the ABA as well, in that style, more so than what the Lakers were doing.
Urban basketball, just like Pete Maravich. 888-729-3776. Let's talk to Markeem in South Carolina. Markeem, thanks for calling the right time.
Yeah, what's up, Bo? You made my point that I was going to make earlier with the whole lack of parity, because I'm 28 years old, born in 1988, so I missed all of the Lakers and Celtics. But what I always hear is that was the golden age of basketball because guys weren't stacking the deck. And I looked at those rosters last night. I was like, wait a minute. Hold on. There was like 4 teams. Like, they had the Sixers with Moses Malone and Dr. J and, all those guys. He had the Lakers and he had the Celtics. It's crazy. The Pistons, like, I don't know what people are talking about. But, yeah, I'm just curious about the thoughts.
Hey, man, I appreciate the call, man. Think about this for a second. The Sixers lost in the finals to the Lakers. And all they did was go get the best player in the NBA. They went and got Mo Malone, right? Like, everybody been out here trying to get better. Whatever way they could, everybody's been out here trying to find a way to get better. I don't know why people pretend like this is new.
Just trying to add the best urban basketball player they can.
Like I say, the thing with the Warriors that makes it – that's funny. The thing that happened with the Warriors that was different was rarely is a team that good ever in a position to have the cap space to get a Kevin Durant. That's what was different. 888-729-3776. That's our telephone number. Coming up next, how the last 2 days been after winning a championship. We'll talk to David West of the Golden State Warriors on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, Sirius XM Channel 80.
Thanks for listening to the Right Time Podcast. Please come back tomorrow for more. And don't forget to listen to The Right Time with Bomani Jones from 4 p.m. to 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
And now, insurance-minded speeches from Geico.
Let's talk about power. To illustrate this, allow me to tell you a story about how I moved a tow truck 25 miles using only my index finger. I was stranded with a flat tire. I opened the Geico app. Then, with a few taps of my finger, I beckoned emergency roadside assistance and a tow truck to my car. I invite you all to unleash the full potential of your fingertips with the Geico app. Thank you.